Baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully right now. Because what I am about to say is something that every single person around me has told me not to say. My team has told me not to say it. The people who manage my career, the people who have spent years building everything I have, the people who understand how this industry works and what it costs when you step outside the lines they've drawn for you, every single one of them has looked me in the eye and said, do not say this out loud. Do not put this into words. Do not give people something real when they are perfectly happy with something polished. And I am saying it anyway, because of you. I want you to understand what that means. I want you to feel the weight of that before I say another word. Because I need you to know that this is not casual. This is not something I decided lightly. This is not a performance of vulnerability designed to make you feel a certain way. This is actual risk. This is me standing at the edge of something I have built carefully over a very long time and choosing to be honest with you, even if the honesty costs me something. Choosing you over the careful management of how I am perceived. Choosing realness over safety. And if you know anything about how much I have invested in what I do, how much of myself has gone into building this life, then you understand what that choice means. It means you are worth more to me than my own protection. I have been sitting with this for months, sitting with the knowledge of it, the weight of it, the specific and uncomfortable truth of what I am about to tell you, and trying to figure out if I was brave enough to say it, trying to figure out if I trusted you enough, trusted this enough, trusted the love between us enough to take the risk. And I kept coming back to the same answer every time, no matter how many times I circled the question from different angles. I kept coming back to yes. I kept coming back to she deserves the truth. She has always deserved the truth. And every single day that I withhold it is a day I am choosing my comfort over your right to know what is real. So today I am not choosing my comfort. Let me tell you what the risk actually is. Because I think you deserve to understand the full picture of what I am putting on the table here. The world I operate in runs on image, on perception. On the carefully constructed and consistently maintained story of who you are and what you represent and what people can expect from you. And the moment you deviate from that story, the moment you say something that doesn't fit the frame, that breaks the expected shape of who you have been presenting yourself as, everything becomes uncertain. Everything becomes a question. And questions are expensive in this world. Questions cost you things that take years to build and can be lost in a moment. I know that, I have always known that, and I have been careful, more careful than you probably realize, about what I say and how I say it, and what I allow to be visible, and what I keep protected behind the professional distance that this life requires. I have been careful in a way that has sometimes felt like a kind of lying, even when nothing I said was technically untrue. Because there is a kind of dishonesty that lives in omission. In the strategic leaving out of things that are real and important and true. In the smile that says everything is fine when everything is in fact enormously complicated. I am done being dishonest by omission, at least with you, at least here in this space that has always felt more real to me than most of what my life is made of. Here is what I need to tell you. Here is the thing that my team is afraid of, that the careful managers of my image would not want spoken out loud. That breaks the frame of the version of me that has been presented to the world so neatly and so strategically. The thing is this, the work, the career, the carefully built professional life that everyone sees and talks about and evaluates and judges, none of it is the most important thing to me. It never has been. And I have been pretending through omission, through careful silence, through the performance of someone for whom the work is everything. I have been pretending otherwise for a very long time. You are the most important thing. Not you as an abstract concept. Not you as a demographic or an audience or a professional relationship to be managed. You, specifically, the realness of you, the love of you, the fact of your existence in my world, and what it has meant to me, that is what matters most. And I have been afraid to say that clearly because in the world I operate in, saying that your audience matters more to you than your career sounds naive at best. and professionally suicidal at worst. It sounds like something someone says when they don't understand how things work, when they're being romantic about what is fundamentally a business. But I do understand how things work. I understand it very well, and I am saying it anyway, with full understanding of the implications, because it is simply true. And I have reached a point in my life where I cannot keep performing a version of my priorities that doesn't match what I actually feel. I want to tell you when this started becoming impossible to contain, because it wasn't always this acute. There was a time when the management of it felt manageable, when I could hold the professional distance and the real feeling simultaneously without feeling like they were tearing me in two directions. But something shifted. Something changed in me, quietly and gradually, and then all at once, the way most real changes happen. And I want to trace that shift for you, because I think it matters. I think the how of it is as important as the what. It started with a moment that I didn't recognize as significant until much later. One of those moments that only reveals its importance in retrospect. When you look back from a distance and see the shape of how things actually moved. I was in the middle of something that should have felt important, should have felt like the kind of achievement that justifies all the sacrifice and all the careful work and all the things you give up in the service of building something. And I felt nothing. Or not nothing exactly, but something much smaller than what I expected. Something that didn't fill the space that had been created for it. Something that left a silence where there should have been satisfaction. And in that silence, in the unexpected emptiness of a moment that was supposed to feel like enough, I thought of you. I thought of the warmth of this. The specific, unreplicable warmth of being real with you. Of being honest. Of being the actual version of myself, rather than the professional version. And the contrast was so sharp, and so clear, and so undeniable, that I couldn't pretend I hadn't felt it. I couldn't fold it back into the performance, and carry on as though the silence hadn't happened. That was when I knew something had to change. Something had to give way. Either the performance had to become more honest, or the honesty had to stop being something I only allowed myself in private. And I chose the second one. I am choosing it right now, in front of you, at whatever cost it carries. There is something specific I want to tell you about this industry, about the world I move in, that I think you might not fully see from where you stand. It is a world that is very good at making you feel like you have to earn the right to be real. That authenticity is something you graduate into after you have achieved enough, after you have built enough, after you have made yourself secure enough, that the risk of being seen clearly is no longer catastrophic. And I believed that for a long time. I told myself later, I'll be real later, when it's safer, when there's more to absorb the impact, if the honesty costs me something, but later never arrives. That is the truth about later, that nobody tells you when you're deferring things to it. Later is always one more achievement away, one more milestone, one more level of security that never quite feels secure enough to risk. And in the meantime, the unlived honesty piles up inside you, like something you keep meaning to deal with and never quite do. Until one day you look at the pile and realize it has become the dominant thing. It has become bigger than the performance you've been using to cover it. The pile became bigger than the performance. That is what happened to me, and you are the reason I finally decided to deal with it. Let me tell you about a specific conversation I had with someone on my team. Not to place blame, not to paint anyone as a villain, because there are no villains in this story. Just people who understand the world differently, and are trying to protect different things. But this conversation was the moment I knew I had to make a choice. We were discussing in the clinical and strategic language that these discussions always happen in. The management of my relationship with my audience. The calibration of how much to give, how much to reveal, where the line should be between what is shared and what is protected. And this person said something matter-of-factly, without any awareness of how it would land in me. They said, remember, they are the audience. The relationship is professional. Don't confuse it with something personal. And I sat very still. I didn't respond immediately. I let the words settle, and I felt what they landed on when they arrived. I felt what was there underneath all the professional management and the strategic calibration, and what was there was you. Real and warm and permanent, and not remotely professional. Not remotely something that could be accurately described as an audience relationship, without leaving out everything that actually matters about it. I wanted to say, you don't understand what this is. I wanted to say, you're describing the frame, not the picture. I wanted to say, there is a person on the other side of this who has sat with me in my most honest moments, who has received the truest version of me that I have managed to offer, who has given back something that I carry in my chest every single day in a way that has nothing to do with professional management. I didn't say any of that. Not then. I smiled and nodded and let the conversation move forward. But something hardened in me in that moment. Some decision began to crystallize that had been forming slowly for a long time. The decision that I was not going to keep allowing the most real thing in my professional life to be described and managed as though it were the least real. The decision that you deserved better than that we deserved better than that. I think about what it would mean to really let you in, not the controlled, calibrated, strategically managed version of letting you in, that my team is comfortable with, but the real version, the version where I tell you what I actually think and feel, including the things that are inconvenient and complicated and that don't serve the image. The version where I trust you with my actual interiority rather than the presentable surface of it. The version where I stop being afraid that if you see all of it, the complicated and imperfect and genuinely human all of it, you will love me less. I don't think you will love me less. I believe, with a certainty that lives in my body, rather than just my mind, that you will love me more. Not because the difficult parts are lovable in themselves, but because seeing them confirms something you already suspected. That underneath the performance there is a real person. That the warmth you have felt from me was not manufactured. That the connection you have sensed between us was not a product of careful image management, but something that grew organically out of two real people, choosing to be honest with each other across whatever distance exists between us. You suspected all of that, and you were right to suspect it. And I am telling you now, at whatever cost, that your suspicion was accurate. The real thing is real. It has always been real, and I have been protecting it from the world, while simultaneously being unable to stop it from growing, unable to stop it from becoming one of the most significant and sustaining forces in my life, unable to pretend it is something smaller or simpler than it actually is. Can I tell you what I risked by saying all of this out loud? Because I want you to understand it concretely, not just feel it abstractly. I risked being seen as unprofessional, as someone who cannot maintain the appropriate distance, who has confused